Welcome back to In Focus Kentucky. On today's episode, we're focusing on the Dyslexia Toolkit available to school districts in Kentucky to help them identify and instruct students who display characteristics of dyslexia. And joining me now to talk about the bill is the co-sponsor, House Representative Adia Wuchner of the 66th District representing Boone County in Kentucky. Thanks so much for joining us here on our show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And first we want to start with you explaining to our viewers an overview of the bill and sharing with us why it was so important for you to be involved.
Well, this is an issue that's been very dear to my heart for many years. I have a son who was dyslexic, several grandsons. Have worked with summer camps for children that are dyslexic, and worked on an original piece of legislation in 2012, which was part of what we call RTI legislation, response to intervention, with a definition and certain pieces. But we knew moving forward in 2017 proposed legislation to update first of all, the definition of dyslexia. It's been modified and it's grown, and we wanted to make sure we were using the most updated definition, and also all the elements that go around addressing these issues. So 2017, the bill didn't make it through, and I said sometimes, legislators will become micromanagers, and we don't want to, but we want to make sure that what we're providing for students in Kentucky is the very best, that they all have an opportunity. And for those that have the disability or disorder, you may want to call it, some call it, of being dyslexic, we've not always addressed their needs. They're specific, it's a specific learning disability that is neurological. We need to make sure that was in the definition. Neurological in essence, but it doesn't affect all their cognitive ability. Many of these children are what we call dual exceptionalities. They're very bright. They're actually gifted in many areas. So the bill, first of all, this year we have our own section of law dedicated in this bill to dyslexia itself. So we moved from putting it under other pieces of legislation to have its own section in the KRS. We refined the definition, and then we began. What do we do? The Department of Education also in the last couple of years has had a task force working on it. We've been working on it. And so we've incorporated not just the definition in its own section of law, but that the Department of Education will then create a toolkit to make it available to the school districts. So they're working on that. They've been working on that. And I just recently spoke to Commissioner Lewis, and I had worked with him initially when he was at the Cabinet for Education on this issue. It was very important to him as we worked together through this process, and he has assured me, as the new Commissioner of Education, he is 100%, I can almost say 115% behind it. The toolkit will be continuing its development so that those components of screening, best practices will be put together for a place for the districts as a resource for them, and they'll be ready to move that out soon.
And share with us about, it was actually two bills that were aimed to helping children with dyslexia that was passed during this previous session, correct?
Yes.
So explain what the difference between the two bills.
The other piece of legislation was aimed at setting up a resource, a fund, where private money or donations or grants could be established that could then be a resource back to the schools wanting to make sure that they have the screening tools. Dyslexia Ready to Read is what we called both of these acts. So that may happen in the future. The General Assembly keeps on working, and we'll keep on working towards this end.
Do you foresee new legislation potentially to be added in the future in regards to dyslexia and just kind of expanding on what you've already helped create?
I do. That's the whole thing. Legislation is fluid. It grows just as we grew from the 2012 pieces of legislation, a proposal in 17. We just accomplished so much this past session, but there's still much more work to be done in this area.
And for those viewers who may not have been able to see and hear the feedback that was going on during those committee sessions, talk to us about the feedback that you were hearing from people who were wanting to see this bill come to fruition. From
parents across the Commonwealth. Sometimes they'd show up at my office, which was amazing. There's a gentleman who's actually with the Farm Bureau, and they said, so-and-so's out here from the Farm Bureau. It wasn't even from my district. And I said, we don't have an appointment. But when he came back in my office, he said, I just wanted to let you know that I'm supporting this bill and why. and why I'm supporting 187. And as he spoke about it, because he spoke with passion about his own child, who it took 3 years to get the correct diagnosis, and now he needs a tutor. And he said, you know, it appeared to my son, and I've heard this story so often from parents, that they were failing, and they couldn't read. And I showed him a computer screen of what sometimes it looks like a page looks like for a child who's dyslexic, how the words, the letters, and seem to almost move around because of the neurological impact. And he said that's why he could read the word in one paragraph, and I'd read with him in the next paragraph, and he didn't know the word. And it made sense to him. But so many parents and teachers and educators who want the very best for their students and our children. But these are some of the brightest and the best, and if we failed to do the basics, give them the basic educational and reading skills and tools that they need, and realize that we don't all, you know, some of us have to wear glasses. As I told one young man, I said, I wear glasses. His name was Dewey. I said, we need to make sure that we give you the tools so that you can read. He says, I want to be an engineer, but I can't read. Dewey deserves to be an engineer, but we have to make sure that we're teaching him in the way that he needs to be educated.
I know you've also been doing some traveling too, to be able to share kind of what's going on here in Kentucky in this new bill, but also just to see what else is happening in the country in regards to this issue.
Yes, and you know, it's interesting because as you talk to educators and parents across the country, Kentucky's not isolated. Other states are making progress in assuring that they have the educational tools for their children. And so that's very encouraging. Some states, you know, the Southern Regional Education Board did a great report and has been following, and were very supportive in what we were doing here in Kentucky. They called me because they followed the bill when I filed it in 2017, and they said, what are you going to do next year, meaning 2018? I said, well, I'll be filing it again. So, and they sent letters of support and are much respected across the states and by the legislators.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here on InFocus Kentucky, and your work that you've done with this particular bill, and is now going to be moving forward here in our state.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about dyslexia. I think that's the thing, is to have that conversation and make sure that schools and parents and teachers have all the resources that they need.
We really appreciate your help, and once again, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, thanks so much for watching InFocus Kentucky. There are many ways to keep up with updates about this show. You can watch this or any of our past shows online at SpectrumInFocus.com, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search at Mario Anderson TV. Have a great week.